All right. We do not want our boys expressing the softer end of the emotional range. We don't like it when they cry, right? We don't like it when they are fussy or whiny. We're very tolerant of a girl crying.
Hello and welcome to the Stroke It podcast. I'm Jenny Townsend, your host. Thank you for joining me. I'm so excited for you to be inspired to live your life fully, to take ownership of your time, your schedule, and your life, but most importantly, learn and grow and develop personally and professionally. Myself and others are going to share life lessons that we've learned through leadership, through heartache, through pain, through struggles, and we'll be sharing some success stories with you as well. Super eager for you to dive in, learn, and grow. And once again, just take ownership of your life today. Hello and welcome, Jenny Townsend, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I have Dr. Gloria. And if you are a parent, especially a man, you are going to want to turn up the volume. You're going to want to reduce any distractions that you have. Dr. Gloria has so much expertise and experience, and I'm going to read a little bit about her bio before I bring her on. Gloria has 50 years of experience helping preschoolers through adults examine emotional needs and heal from the trauma. She has worked with individuals, families, groups, and schools. Our brain's record experiences from the moment we are born. Our storehouse of experiences can be used to help us or harm us. She is the best-selling author of her new book, Read, Reflect, Respond, The 3 R's of Growth and Change. It's available on Amazon. She's going to tell us a little bit more about that today. But at the end of the day, we're going to be giving you some really great tools to guide you and heal the early traumas. Gloria, thank you so much for joining me.
You are welcome. I'm delighted to be here. Looking
I
forward
am
to a really good conversation.
Yeah, I'm super excited, especially as a business owner that has a child-based business. And obviously, I'm married. My husband's a male, so I'm excited to dive into that. And growing up, I had a couple brothers, so I'm really excited to learn from you and to be inspired. But before we get started, I really would love for you to share with our listeners a little bit about you. What season of life are you in? Where do you live? And something unique that we want to know.
You've tapped into me on a very special day. This is my wedding anniversary today.
Yay,
Yes, my
congratulations. How
husband
many
and I
years?
have been married for 53 years. So it was an attraction that stuck for a long time.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm sure all the listeners want to know, how did you do 53 years? Like, what's the secret? I'm sure there's not just one thing though, right?
There isn't one thing, all right? But I think the immediate sense that you can fit together is really important. And no matter how, right, you fit together, there will be stress in that relationship. And you have to prepare for how to manage the stress because a stress point is a choice point, right? Am I going to stay in this relationship or am I going to leave this relationship? And depending on how we relate to stress is how we relate to commitment and relationship with other people. So, people have friends from early childhood. I've talked with lots of people who still are in touch with their kindergarten friends, right? So it's possible. You're in touch with a kindergarten friend. It's
Yes.
possible to sustain relationship long term. But the difficulty for most marriages is that we do not help men to access the full range of emotions. And that's one of the things that I'm working on right now is writing a book for men and fathers in particular to help them to learn how to access the full range of emotion. Because if you can't do that, then you're handicapped in terms of relationship with friends, spouse, children. It just limits you completely.
Wow, well, I'm really excited to dive into that. So, you have another book as well that I wanted to mention, and I really want to really dive into that too. So, if we were to get started with the podcast today, which book do you think we should dive into first to really give some great tools and inspiration to start off with?
Well, we'll dive into the one that you can access, all right, which is the Read, Reflect, Respond, and I'll show you a copy of it so you knew what the cover looks like. There it is. It's a
And that's
journal
available
book.
on Amazon as well for any of
Yeah,
our
it's
listeners
available
that are
on
wanting to tune in.
Amazon. It's a journal book, but it is different from most journal books in that there's an essay on one page and the facing page is blank. Most journal books have lines. They expect you to respond in terms of language. But honestly, there are so many more things packed in your brain than language, right? We store things in terms of emotion, in terms of motion, right? Physical movement. And all of our early storage is visual or kinesthetic, all right? It's in terms of motion or things that we see. And you can tap into that early history by using the blank page to draw, to scribble, to just respond in any way that comes out of your body. And it is surprising what you can tap into once you give yourself permission to let go of language,
And
right?
not have to
Because
be
there's
perfect
so
on the
much housed
lines.
in there that isn't language that you want to access it. You want it to come out.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I've got 2, young men that work for me,
Mm-hmm.
and both of them are very much artist. So, like, even, like, at a conference a couple weeks ago, one is, like, doodling the guy that's actually speaking, and I'm like, "Is he gonna be comprehending this?" And he came back from the conference, and it was like he actually gave me, like, a 4-page
Right.
overview of what he learned and how we're gonna enhance the business and all that, and here I just thought he was doodling, but he was actually, like, processing the
Right.
information.
Right.
And I have another one who's very, very artistic, and he'll be in meetings, and I'm like, "He's not listening to us, but he actually is."
Mhm.
So, I love that you're saying that.
Yeah, it is so easy for us to process in other ways, but we don't train our kids to really tap into that part of themselves. So we use language so much.
Right.
All the
So
time we're talking.
So when you're saying we don't train our children to that, so I feel like at the early stages, obviously they go to art class and we teach them to maybe doodle a little bit and, to start writing and all of that. But when does the shift happen where we're not as supportive as that creative outlet to where they're journaling or they're being creative and able to process their emotions other than just speaking it?
Yeah, it happens in elementary school, right? Once we put a child into school, first grade forward, we're focusing on language. We're focusing on writing. We're focusing on typing. All right. Things are to be communicated in words, but in actuality, we still are processing in terms of action and visual. And so we need to open ourselves up to saying to children, instead of tell me, show me in any way that you need to show me. So that could be in terms of motion, that could be in terms of pictures, that could be in terms of action. Show me is much better than tell me. Tell me gets a freeze from a child.
Right.
I give this example quite often because it's important to understand the difference between the way that male and female children are addressed when they're stressed or in trouble. So I tell people, go to the mall, sit down, and watch and wait. And eventually you will see a little girl be distressed, run up to her parents, all right? She will get picked up and she will be asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" The little boy runs up to his parents and he will be asked, "What's wrong? What happened?" If he gives a good enough response, he will be picked up and receive comfort. If he does not give a good enough response, he will not be picked up, he will not receive comfort, he will be sent back into the fray, right? We have a distinct difference in the way that we emotionally relate to men and to women. And so that's another reason why the page is blank, because men can more easily access motion and activity than language. So it's a great journal book for men as
I
well.
love that. Okay, so can we go back to the point you were just making when you're talking about how we treat a young little girl and we treat a young boy differently when it comes to stress? Can
Mhm.
you kind of unpack that a little bit? What's the why? How can we realize, or what's the trigger so we know we're doing it so that we can change that behavior? And then what's the benefit of changing that behavior?
Yeah, to really dig into it, you have to understand that boys, infant boys, come into the world with a broader range of emotional expression than girls do. They're born this way. They naturally go higher and they naturally go lower in terms of emotional expression as infants. So you have to ask, well, what happens? Why can't they maintain that? Why don't they sustain that? And the answer to that is that most boys, most infants, interact with women. They interact with their mothers. All right. Mothers are comfortable with the female range of emotional expression, not the male range of emotional expression. And so they withdraw or distance. They're not responsive when their boys go higher or lower. So they train their boys to narrow the range of emotional expression that they use. And then as a culture, when these boys start to walk, we do it, we double down. All right. We do not want our boys expressing the softer end of the emotional range. We don't like it when they cry, right? We don't like it when they are fussy or whiny. We're very tolerant of a girl crying. Little girls can get away with crying easily. Little boys cannot. They get told not to cry, stop crying. Expressing any emotion on the softer end of the continuum is negative. And then we have all kinds of language to shame boys for expressing tenderness, expressing care, concern. All right. We shame them
Yeah,
for
we do.
expressions. We
I mean, I can
shame them.
just hear it, like, mama's boy is a shame
Mhm.
thing, or he's so needy is a shame thing,
Right.
or
Right.
crybaby, and
hmm
yes, I mean, a
Yeah,
lot
and
of this
then
is
think
populating in my
about it,
head.
right? Then we expect them to grow up, get married, and suddenly be open to tenderness and love and softness. It's not happening. It's not happening. We trained it out of them, all right? We have to change this because um, first of all, let me say that it was adaptive. All right. It was adaptive. If you look at the caveman, I do not want my caveman, all right, being sensitive and crying and staying in the cave. I want him out there with the spear, hunting and getting food. All right. It was adaptive for a caveman. It was adaptive for sending men to war. All right. We have killed off thousands upon thousands of healthy men in wars. So it was adaptive, all right? I want you to be able to climb out of that foxhole and head across the field with your gun blazing, right? Because here at home, all right, I want to maintain my freedom. So it was adaptive. It is no longer adaptive. If you look at the way that we are doing war, going to do war in the future, it is pushing buttons. It is not sending men running across the field. So we do with the age of artificial intelligence, there will be more free time. All right. We will have access to many more um, opportunities to engage with each other. And so, if we don't want to increase domestic violence, we have to increase domestic communication. And the only way to do that is to retrain our boys. So, in terms of education, we have to start at the preschool level.
So that comes down to basically the teachers and the mentors. So who is training those individuals on this philosophy or this understanding?
The interesting thing about this is that research on this has been going on for decades. If you look back in the research about the development of boys, you'll find things in the 40s and 50s. There are people that have been publishing this, announcing this for decades, but we're not paying attention to it.
And why do you think that is?
Well, I think it is because our culture has been based on this dichotomy that we do send men off to war. Men are to defend us. That's changed, right? Now there are numerous women in the services as well. And so as that changes, we can also change the way that we approach our boys, but it takes education. So you ask, who's educating the preschool teacher right now? Nobody is educating the preschool teacher. We need to educate the preschool teacher.
Okay, so if we don't have a preschool teacher that's listening to us today, which I hope there is, it's then going to start at home
It's going to start it
with
out.
the
Right.
parents.
Yeah.
So can
And
you
so I'm in the process of educating the father for that very reason.
So let's start with the father. Let's talk to the men that are listening today, or even the women that can maybe share this with their husbands or the fathers of the children. What are some things that men can be doing right now when they're thinking of parenting young boys or young adults that are men?
Yeah, so one of the things is to spend more time with an infant, right? And that's happening, all right? First of all, there are more fathers staying home to take care of infants, and there are more joint experiences where both parents are working. And so they're trading off and taking turns with taking care of infants. So it starts with having more interaction with an infant and then educating yourself to challenge the culture. All right. There's no reason why a boy who gets pushed on the playground can't respond by crying, right? I just got shoved and landed on my butt on the playground. That hurts. It hurts physically, it hurts emotionally, it hurts socially. So let me express it and embrace that. All right. So educating preschool teachers and parents is really critical to legitimize the full range of feelings that a human being can express and to give boys permission to cry, to be irritated, to be disappointed, and to validate those feeling states. Right? They're not going to get stuck in it. I think sometimes we fear they're going to get stuck there, and that's why we don't acknowledge it. But they're not going to get stuck there.
Right.
Emotions come and go. We don't get stuck.
100%. So, okay, so one would be the father figure spending more time with the infant. So, whether that's spending more time or when they are home, creating that connection that maybe just
Right.
the mother had only had in the past because most women were stay-home moms, which, yes, there's a lot of stay-home dads. Like, with my child-based business, we have a lot of dads who are
Mhm.
actually bringing the kids and doing
Right.
it. And the mother is out in the workforce and
Right.
she's enjoying it and she's loving it. And then there is that, working with both of them working from home, they get to share the parenting experiences
Right.
as well. So, all right, so being with an infant is one thing. What's another thing that a father could be doing right now to create that connection with their son?
The other is how you interact with a toddler, right? Toddlers want to experiment with everything. And so giving permission for them to explore and to experiment, and that means they will express the full range of emotion as they do explore, right? They're gonna get disappointed, they're gonna get physically hurt, and legitimizing those feeling states, all right? Eliminate the phrases "stop crying." Right? If you could just eliminate that phrase in relationship to little boys and legitimize the fact, right, that it's okay to cry and I need to understand what you're crying about. Tell me more. Tell me what happened, right? Rather than the stop crying approach, which is so traditional for boys. Girls don't get that. Boys get that phrase a lot. So if we could just eliminate that phrase in interaction with toddlers and first graders, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, as you're talking about this, I'm like going back into the relationship with my husband, and we have had some differences and some things that have happened, and people that have been listening to the show are well aware of what's happening. But, you know, how we were brought up was very different. He was in a home where his mom gave him lots of love and his dad gave him lots of love. And his dad gave him a lot of love and affection because he didn't have a father figure. So he really, really made up for that. And it's a lot of personal touch. It's a lot of like
Mhm,
like verbally expressing how much they loved them. And I grew up in a loving home, but it was very different. It was my parents didn't say they loved us on a normal basis. There was definitely no affection. It
mhm.
was, you have a roof over your head and food on the table. That's love. Let's get back to
Right,
work.
right.
And so very, very different. So when we were, going through our marriage, how we showed each other love was very different. How we received love.
Mhm,
And it wasn't until I read the book, The Five Love Languages, and we went through those, I understood like the personal touch component and the quality time.
mhm.
And before I'd be like, oh my God, he's so needy. That was my brain,
Right.
but now I'm like, "No, no, no," like, he needs that personal touch because that's how he was brought up with that love and that affection. So, like,
Mhm.
every single time we're on the couch, he has to be touching me, like, whether it's just rubbing my hand, rubbing my shoulder, his hand on me while we're sleeping in the
Right.
bed, and
Mhm.
it's unfortunate that I realized that, 10 years into the marriage and not earlier about that need for that personal touch and for that love and that affection. And I think at times too, like, I'm a strong, independent woman. Like, we're used to like needing a man that's really strong and independent. And that's what our parents told us we needed because we needed someone to match our energy, if not be more.
Right.
And so there was a time where I was like, he's really needy or, man up, like man
Mhm.
up. And
Mhm.
now, being married for as many years, I embrace that softness and I
That's great.
embrace that approach to life and I embrace that love for me. Like I'm now open to receiving love in a different way than I was before,
That's
too.
fabulous.
So I feel like there's so much that we can learn from what you're saying
Mhm.
and embracing that men do have a soft side
They
and
do.
they do want to be loved and touched and comforted
Mhm.
and they need to be able to express those emotions and
Absolutely.
release that sadness and we do need to validate it. That's going to build
Mhm.
a stronger relationship with that person.
Mhm.
So I totally agree with everything that you're saying right now and I know we were talking about parenting and I'm taking it to more of like a husband-wife relationship, but I think it's very relatable to what you're saying.
Oh, it is, and the 5 love languages, that is such a great resource, right? Everybody should know what their love language is and use that because as you said, it makes a huge difference once you understand, right, what your spouse or your friend how they are really organized and what love language is their favorite, then you
Right.
can really communicate. So that's a nonverbal form of communication is to really understand what turns the other person on, right? What gets them resonating and vibrating and feeling that they're receiving attention and affection. So you
Mhm.
have to work on the right wavelength.
Right, 100%. So, okay, so do you have any other advice when it comes to the father figure, as far as interacting with that before I have you give some examples of what the mother can be doing?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've done in working with adult men is have them really understand their own fathers, because that's where you learned how to be a male, is in relationship to your own father. And so many times when a male can understand what their own history has been and what they want to be for themselves moving forward, there's this wonderful connection that happens with their own fathers, that they can go back in relationship with their father and talk more honestly and openly about the history of their relationship with their father, right? And invite their father to come into the present and expand, elaborate the relationship that they have with each other. And that makes such a huge difference, right? If you can find a new connection, kind of a new pathway to connect with your own father, it's exciting, right? It deepens the relationship with that person. And if you deepen a relationship with someone else, you actually open up parts of yourself and free parts of yourself to do more exploring. So that's a great benefit for men of really understanding themselves, digging into their own history, and then reestablishing different relationships, both with their father, with their brothers, with their friends. It just blossoms. It just keeps moving like a ripple in a
Right. So
wave.
I'm shaking my head and I have a smile on my face as you're saying this because I feel like that's probably pretty challenging for
Mhm.
most to do.
Mhm. Mhm. It is, right? It is a hard thing
So
to
how
do,
are
to
they
go back into your relationship with a parent, male or female, right? It is hard to go back into relationship with a parent and be transparent about an important dynamic in that relationship, right? How do you talk to each other? How you related to each other? What kind of punishment was used in the household, to go back into that history.
Are you looking to enhance your relationship with yourself? If so, get the Stroke It Guide. My book is available on Amazon and on my website. Not only is my book going to help you with your personal journey with yourself, but it's also going to help you with the relationships of other stakeholders in your life. For instance, your spouse or partner, your employer, your employees, your friends, or your family members. And of course, because the title, there is a chapter for your pleasure, which is the last one, in the bedroom. The book offers lots of great tools and resources. There's a lot of great downloads, and it features many of my podcast guests, and they have thousands of downloads and resources that are worth a lot of money. So you're going to want to get my book today. You can buy that on Amazon or on my website, and you can change and take ownership of your life today with one simple click.
And have an honest, transparent conversation with your parent is definitely challenging, but it's also most of the time hugely rewarding.
Do you have that framework outlined in one of your books where it helps with creating the time and the space and creating where you feel like you can open up and be really honest with a parent about it?
Most definitely. The other thing that can happen if your parent is not open to having any kind of conversation or going back into history in any way is that there's a marvelous technique in therapy that can serve as a substitute for that. And the process is called an empty chair process, where you sit facing an empty chair and you present as yourself, as the son, and then you move into the other chair and present as the father. And it's a fascinating experience, and it works exceptionally well because you know your parent, right? And you can take on the role of your parent and interact with that person by doing this process of moving back and forth between these two chairs and role playing the parent and really being able to confront, to express, to invite a change. And so the change takes place in you, which is really what you want to have happen for the change to take place in you.
Right. And when you say that change, it's like your thought process or your feelings towards that parent.
Mhm.
And do you find that it's also linked to like forgiving your parent or not expecting your parent to be perfect or accepting like they will make mistakes? And because I feel like a lot of it has to do with accepting your parent for who they are. Because I feel like there is a lot of judgment where it's like,
Right. A lot has to do with that acceptance, with kind of trusting that regardless of the way that you were treated by your parent, you have enough emotional energy, right? Your brain has enough space that you can heal from that. You can have a dramatic change in the way that you experience your parent, whether you have a face to face interaction or whether you role play the interaction. It changes you, and that's the goal. Right? The goal is to change you so that you're freed up and you're not roadblocked by the emotional way that you were treated or trained.
I always think taking ownership and taking that responsibility into your own hands and
Mhm.
focusing on you because you can control you, you can change the way you're thinking, and you can change the way that you behave in the future or how you react or how you communicate with other people. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to us creating the change that we want to see
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
I believe so much in the work that you're doing. That's amazing. When it comes to the mothers, because I do want to make sure we just touch on that really briefly before I ask you some more questions and dive into your books. Um, what are some things that mothers could be doing? One thing that's coming to mind is sometimes, and I've seen this with others, is it's really hard for the mom to kinda let go and give the baby, let others hold the baby, especially the men, because they think that they're the protector and they know all the
Mhm.
things. So I don't know if that's a barrier of, like, breaking that to where you're releasing that control and you're allowing other people in, but that may or may not be
Well,
something. I
I
just
I I think the key for mother is really, understanding, knowing this reality that you have a natural tendency to limit the emotional expression of a boy, that your own discomfort with that broad range that they can access needs to be confronted, right? You need to be able to be flexible, to open yourself up to the reality of, yeah, I'm uncomfortable, right? When he gets that loud or he gets that quiet, I am uncomfortable, but that's the time to lean in rather than to distance. And what mom does naturally is to distance because it's uncomfortable. So it's challenging yourself, all right, to lean into the intensity, to lean into the withdrawal, and not distance yourself, not be afraid to move forward because that boy needs you to legitimize. Okay, so, you're intensely angry, you're intensely sad or lonely or withdrawn. I'm not going to abandon you, and I'm not going to train you that you could only access me when you're in this range. I want you to access me even when you're way out here on these endpoints.
parenting. I'm not a parent. I can't imagine. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't imagine how hard it is, but
Mhm.
there's so many different variables, and then obviously, you have 2 people that come from different families trying to then create a family, and their different philosophies and ways of doing things can be so
That's
different,
right.
and you just wanna do the best for this little baby. You want them to be independent, you want them to be strong, but you want them to be emotionally intelligent, and you want them to be able to love and express themselves in the future
Right.
as they grow as a young adult and as they remarry and create their own family as
Right.
well. Um,
Infants are emotionally brilliant. That's the only survival mechanism they have, if you think about it, right? Reading the environment, reading the emotion in the world around is their survival tool. So you could take a perfectly healthy, clean, well-fed, well-dressed infant, put them in a cardboard box, and set them out on the street, they will immediately start crying, right? Because they're perceiving the environment. They just recognize they've been abandoned, right? You left me in a box, and I know that I have just been left and disconnected from another human being. So I'm going to start to cry and scream. So I attract the attention of other human beings. You can also use an infant to appreciate um, any of your relatives, right? If you want to know the strength and weakness of your relatives, pass an infant around the room, right? With some people, the infant will be cooing and happy. With other people, the infant will start to fuss, right? So that's not a trustworthy relative. And with another, the infant will really start to cry. The infant's not hungry. The infant does not need to have a diaper change. The infant has just told you that person is not comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
That person is dangerous, emotionally dangerous for me as an infant.
So what you're saying is they're a really good judge of character.
They're perfect. They're perfect judges of character. Think about it. It is their only survival mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They can't walk, they can't talk, they can't feed themselves. Their only survival mechanism is reading the emotional tone in the environment and responding to that in order to get their other basic needs met.
Right. So with both your books, because I think both of them, I know that we talked a little bit about the read, reflect, and
Mhm.
respond, because as I'm like obviously understanding that description and like some of the conversations that we're having, um, would you recommend that as a good book for fathers, or do you think they should get your other book, How to Not F Up Being a Father?
Definitely how not to F up being a father.
Okay,
Right,
let's talk a little
because
bit
that
about that
that
book.
that has kind of the clear understanding, the explanation of how did you get here, right? Why do you maintain this dynamic with your son? And what do you need to do in order to break through that? Many times I say to clients that they feel like, they're facing a brick wall, right? And they just can't go forward. And I say, imagine that this is tissue paper with bricks painted on it. What would you do if it were tissue paper with bricks painted on it, right? You would just bust right through it and go for whatever it was that you were contemplating. Well, the same thing is true with fathers, right? You can bust through the traditions that you've been trained in and show your son that there's more to emotional expression that can benefit them, not harm them. I understand why we've trained men in this way, but we cannot continue to train them in this way. Our jails are full of men because of this, right? Our marriages fall apart. The divorce rate has dropped only because people don't get married anymore. All right. So the stats don't show up as divorce because they don't have to go to court to separate and move into separate places.
Mm-hmm.
But divorce is definitely related to the fact that we do not educate men to be able to maintain access to the full range of their emotions. So we handicap them. I want to
Yeah.
stop handicapping them.
Right. So, as far as like spouses, because I know I briefly touched on the spouses, but if there was a spouse listening right now and they're like, how do I support my husband? He's the father of my children. Or how do I just support my husband in general? What would be a tip that you would give us?
Yeah, I would say each woman needs to look to her own discomfort because the truth of the matter is, we say that we want men who are tender and understanding, but when a husband heads in that direction, the wife gets nervous. She gets uncomfortable, right? Because she's also been trained that men are not supposed to express those softer emotions. If a man cries or gets sad and shows that in any way, starts to get depressed, we panic. All right? We don't approach, we withdraw, right? So challenging yourself to approach is really the next step for a wife. Challenge yourself to approach when your husband is expressing the softer end of the continuum, or when he's expressing the more intense end of the continuum. Challenge yourself to approach, not to fight back, but to approach, not to escalate and try to match it, but to really approach for understanding. That'll make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think that that's key. I read this book too, Becoming Your Spouse's Better Half, and it talks a lot about what men's needs are and supporting the men's needs. And just because you say a man is needy, he may be needy, but he needs certain things just like women need certain
Right,
things
right.
as well. And it's okay for all of us women to need all these things, but why isn't it okay for men? So it talks about like leaning in and
Mhm,
supporting the things that they need so that they can, number one, feel empowered and
mhm.
they can feel loved and they can feel appreciated, but they can also feel confident in their own skin and not having to be somebody else for everybody else. Because I
Right.
think that's a lot of it too, is that men have to put on this space of like, I'm tough. I'm the man
Mhm,
of the house. I'm going to go make all the money. Like I have
mhm,
to play this role,
mhm.
and they have all these expectations they must live up to because of what their parents' pressure they put on
That's
them,
right.
then the wife's pressure, then the kids' pressure, and then like the boss and CEO. They have all these people that are demanding them to live out all of these things versus what they're really like intent to do or what they want to do. And I feel like they live in all these masks and they wear all these different hats. It's not truly
They do.
them, which leads to them being very unhappy and starting
Mhm.
to drink or they cheat or they stop being absent as a father and all the things as well. And I think that's like a huge contributor to the mental health of men.
Yeah, it really is, and that's why, men, act out more, that's why men use alcohol more, that's why our jails are full of men. We rob them of the opportunity to be expressive.
Right. And it's
If
almost
they
like we
could
already
be
have a plan for them.
expressive, it would make a huge difference.
Yeah. So allowing them some grace and allowing
Mhm,
them to be expressive and be who
mhm,
they want to be. And I've had to do that, too, like with even my own relationship with my husband too. I'm really like supporting things that that he wants. It's not all about me. It's all about
mhm,
my needs. It's not
right,
all about whatever I want. So,
right.
so like leaning into that as well. And that's part of like obviously being married, making sure your spouse is equal with you. One of the things that you had put in here that I wanted to just highlight because I do have a lot of women that are listening. A lot of us are married and
Mhm.
a lot of us are parents. But you had mentioned an interesting dynamic between you and your mother and how that shaped your interactions with others, and you didn't realize it was happening. And I was wondering if you could highlight what you're talking about there.
Yeah, what I'm talking about there is history, right? We all have histories. And in my early history, birth actually, my mother was frightened the first time that she saw me. And so her reaction was to yell, scream, cry for the nurse, the doctor, because I had a birth defect she was not aware of. And that experience as a newborn infant actually had a significant impact on my comfort level in interacting with others. So if you think about it, right, if your first interaction with the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, who's going to raise you, is, terror, and it was really terror for her, then I'm going to shrink. And so for the longest time, I was kind of the girl who loved to participate, but I would wait to be invited or included, right? I wasn't gonna jump in unless there was safety offered to me. And for decades, I lived my life that way, just experiencing the sense that, I have to wait, I have to hold back, even though I have great ideas, even though I'm really smart, even though I want to take the lead, I should wait until, right, I really understood that early experience. And once I found kind of the root of this whole process, it was like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. All right. So now I can move forward easily, freely, confidently, right? In conversation, in volunteering for things, in initiating, without waiting for an invitation. I was always waiting for an invitation. Gloria, what do you think? And then I would, all right, hold forth, but would never initiate. And that's disappeared. So
Right.
it's true for all of us. We have early history experiences that have an emotional impact on how we function in the present. And we can trace those back. We can find those origins and free ourselves from those emotional limitations that we've put on ourselves and many times don't even realize where the root is. But you can always find the root
If you're willing to do the inner work, not
if
just
you're
go
willing
out
to
and
do the
just,
work.
take
Right.
a pill and be like, "Got this." Like, doing the inner work is so key, and I would love to encourage more people to do that inner work and become more self-aware and know yourself fully,
Right.
because so many of our issues or problems can go away once we're aware and we
Hmm.
get down to the root and we can start to heal and
Yeah.
not fix, but heal
That heal. Right.
ourselves, and then healing will start with among other
Yeah,
people that we
it's
love
like
and care.
removing little roadblocks, all right? We all have these little roadblocks, and they can be removed. They really can. Just to,
100%.
take the risk, use
Yeah.
the energy.
Yeah. So, Dr. Gloria, I really have enjoyed our conversation. I feel like I could just continue talking to you. Before we wrap up, if there was one thing that you could leave our listeners with, whether it's a thought, whether it's an action, if it's something they can start today, maybe tomorrow, or something they could consider, what would that one thing be?
That one thing would be to take yourself seriously, to really pay attention. Anything that has popped up for you in the course of listening to this conversation, take action on it. Take it seriously, right? Get some help. Challenge yourself to grow, and you will be amazed at the shift and the energy that comes as a result of releasing things that have been roadblocks for you since early childhood.
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Okay, so tell our listeners how they can get in touch with Dr. Gloria. If you have anything that's coming up, let us know because I'm sure our listeners are going to want to connect with you.
Well, you can find me through my website. That's the easiest way, and that's www.drvanderhorst www.drvanderhorst.com. So it's www.drvanderhorst.com. There are all kinds of resources on my website. You can also make time to meet with me or talk with me. I would love to engage you, love to be supportive and helpful.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for inspiring us to be better parents, better fathers, better wives, better mothers as well. And I really related to a lot of the information that you shared today. Once again, you can get her books online as well. How to Not F Up Being a Father. And her most recent book that's available on Amazon is Read, Reflect, and Respond, the 3 R's of Growth and Change. Once again, that is an amazing journal that's going to allow you to doodle, and it's going to be able to express yourself as well. It doesn't always have to just be words written on a page. It could be anything that you want as well. At the end of the day, it's all about you and healing and taking ownership of your life and making the changes that you want to see. Dr. Gloria, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate
Thank you,
you.
Jenny. I love talking with you.
And for those that are still with us, please consider 5 people that you can send this podcast to. Wishing you a beautiful day. Thank you for tuning into the Stroke It podcast. I hope you were inspired. I hope you're willing and ready to take some action. I want to encourage you to consider 5 people that could benefit from today's podcast. Super simple to share this episode. You never know who could benefit from hearing this podcast and how you could inspire them to create the change in the life that they're wanting. Cheers, and thank you so much for tuning in. Also, consider giving a review.